Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us.
Okay, perfect. I'm sure more people will come in as we are starting and kind of talking through everything. But since it's 7, I'll get started on it. And we'll just jump straight in. Hello, everyone. My name's Jasmine. I'm from the New Black Film Collective, and welcome to the fourth CMB BYP Creators Online webinar. So this will be about understanding PR and your personal brand. So welcome to those who are new and those who have joined a BYP Creators webinar before. The webinar is being recorded, so you will be able to find it later on YouTube for anyone who wants to kind of go back to it. So today we are in conversation with our guest Mia Farrell, who I'm very excited to introduce to everyone properly in a couple minutes. We'll be talking about understanding PR in the film industry and knowing the importance of your personal brand. So in this webinar, we'll dive into learning about Mia's career in PR, what she's learned, and as well as understanding the larger picture of who we are in our careers, in the industry, and how our personal brand and how that important it is to build relationships and connections when we are ultimately here. So then we'll have some time at the end as well for questions. So please feel free to add those into the chat throughout the webinar. And then in the last 10, 15 minutes, we will have those questions. So yeah, if you will also be able to have the microphone on. So if you did want to speak instead of typing it out, then that will be an option as well when we do our Q&A. But first, for anyone who is new and wants to know more about BYP Network, I'll just tell everyone a little bit more. So BYP, or Black Young Professionals Network, was founded by the need to connect Black professionals and students from all over the world for role model visibility, career opportunities, business support, and ultimately as well to solve our own problems. With a vision to change the Black narrative and advanced careers of millions of Black professionals enabled by Javelin. So Kike Onawinde Ogoro is the founder of BYP and has recently launched Javelin, which is an AI-powered career advancement platform to advance the careers of millions of Black professionals by accessing jobs, mentorship, events such as this, and extra content. So users can join location and industry-based groups to gain knowledge and network and upskill their content. So sign up to Javelin by visiting javelin.byp.network/dashboard. This will be put into the group chat as well. And so we'll have a Q&A as well that you can scan at the end, which will be up for a minute if you wanted to sign up that way. So for the rest of the webinar, we will move into our conversation with Mia. We also have our amazing producer, Sarah Edwards, with us. So she'll be watching the Q&A box. And so when we have our last 5, 10, 15 minutes of Q&A at the end, she'll pop those over to us and we'll be able to answer those. So please let us know as well who you are, what work you're doing, where you're calling in from, so we can all kind of get to know each other, connect, and we can see who's with us tonight. So into introducing our amazing guest, Mia Farrell, who has recently finished an assignment as the interim director of the Hanson Film Institute in Tucson, Arizona. She recently worked at the British Film Institute, where she served as PR manager for BFI festivals, the Institute's two biggest festivals, which are BFI Film Festival and BFI Flair London LGBTQI+ Film Festival. So in her time there, she was also the program manager for the award-winning BFI Film London Festival Critics Mentorship Program. Previously as well, she's been vice president of the international publicity at Paramount Pictures. She's also held roles at Lionsgate UK, Tribeca Festival, the Sundance Film Festival. Originally from Los Angeles, her career in international PR began at DDA Public Relations, and she has represented films at festivals such as the Berlinale, Festival de Cannes, SXSW, San Sebastian, Toronto, and Venice. And now she is currently has her own consultancy, advising documentary and narrative filmmakers and she lives between the US and the UK, but she is here with us on this beautiful sunny day online to talk with us about her career. And we've got some amazing conversation coming up, as we've just had a little bit of a taste of before everybody logged on. So very excited. So hello, Mia. Thank you for
Hi,
joining
thank you for having me.
us. We're just excited to have you, really, just to talk about and demystify, I think would be a key word, such an integral part of the film industry, which is PR. And so it'd be great to just dive straight into getting to know more about you and your work and how you began your career in PR.
Of course. So full disclaimer, as I said right before everyone came in, a couple of different things. One, there's a puppy where I'm at. So I'm hoping there's not going to be lots of barking or other sounds, but if so, I apologize. The second thing is I really want this to be, and it will be, a very different kind of conversation. There are some incredible PR professionals out there, incredible men and women and persons who do this work, and who also have very high profile positions at studios and streamers and everything else, who can speak to a certain aspect of this work that we do. But I think I want this to be the conversation where we can really talk about all of the things. Like you said, we can demystify. We can also talk about what it is to be a Black person or a person of color, a non-binary person in this part of the industry, which is not necessarily always as diverse as we'd like it to be. So I just want this to be the conversation where we talk about the real things and authenticity and integrity, and not just, this is how you do a campaign. This is how, it works with the press and so on. So that's my start. To be very honest, in terms of how I got into PR, I come from a family that worked in the entertainment industry. So, as you said in my bio, I'm born and raised in Los Angeles. I've got family members mostly in front of the camera and then a little bit behind the camera. So I grew up in a household that was very deeply entrenched in entertainment, both in film and television. And I also went to school, and all of my friends at that particular school were children of movie stars or TV stars or filmmakers. And so I always grew up with entertainment around me, but also in a house with an artist. So those were the two things in my life as a young person growing up. I never had any desire to be in front of the camera, but I knew that I wanted art for myself. And so if I had to find a profession that was going to be the thing that I was going to focus on to make a living, that it needed to be in the business. And I did all of the jobs. So for anybody that is on this call who is literally at the beginning of trying to figure out what they want to do in entertainment, I was a PA. I've been an assistant to directors, an assistant to producers, a receptionist at a production company. I worked in personal publicity. Like, I literally did a number of production jobs and then was interested in publicity, and then started at the very bottom and just found that it was interesting. It was the role that allowed me, in terms of my interest and my love of film, but also an interest in people, and especially people from other backgrounds and cultures, and people working in media and creative people. It just was the right combination of all of my interests. And I didn't know that I was going to really truly go into PR. I kind of dipped my toe in it and then it just took off. And then suddenly got turned into a 27-year career.
Oh, amazing. So it's good that it's interesting that you kind of grew up around creatives and that you grew up with people that were very much kind of behind and in front of the camera, but you knew from the start you were not wanting to kind of get in front of the camera or be in that. Did you know that from production to publicist, from being to a publicist and being in PR, what was kind of the thing that kind of really tipped it? What did you know about PR before you even entered the sector? Did you dip your toe in, but growing up in a creative household, did you know about what PR was, or that was something that you had to learn a lot about later? What was the previous experience?
I mean, I think I knew I knew in general. So for instance, my stepfather was a television actor, and he had a TV series like in the 70s and 80s that was popular. And so I knew that he had an agent, and I knew what the agent did. That's the person who gets the jobs, gets you the money. And then I knew that the publicist was the person kind of managing press, managing anything that was promotional, but also as the person who did kind of crisis management and really looking after, you know, their client if something should come up. And in my family, we had something come up because my mother got sick. And it was something that the tabloids were, you know, all over. So the publicist, I knew the publicist is the person who kind of swooped in, managed press, managed situations, but it kind of parked there. And then when I was working in production and trying to figure things out, I was working at a television production company, and we had multiple television shows. And to be honest, you know, working at that company, it was nonfiction. I actually thought that I was going to be a documentary producer, a documentary director, like that was the track I was on. But we had an amazing publicist. And this was a woman, she was really interesting, you know, and bright and curious about a number of things. I liked her as a person. But again, I just thought it was fascinating that her job was working with my bosses, who were the exec producers, working with the media, that somehow she would bring, you know, these people together. And then there'd be this amazing kind of, you know, really beautiful piece that would come out of it, whether that was in a newspaper, a magazine, on TV. And I just thought, oh, that's interesting. It literally was as simple as that. And I had worked at that production company for a number of years and took the summer off to do some travel and came back and was like, I just want to try publicity and see what happens. And started in personal publicity and did that for about a year and liked it. It was really interesting, obviously, because of my family members. You know, I had an understanding of like really kind of looking after and taking care of talent. But you know, at that time and a little bit now as well, there was a certain kind of culture that could be quite toxic in those environments. And I just thought, I'm not really interested in this kind of like vibe, to just kind of put it really bluntly. And so when I was looking for my next job, it really was like there was an ad in Variety. They were looking for an international publicist. And I was intrigued because it just said, you know, that you have to have a good knowledge of geography. And I just thought, what is this? And it was the agency DDA. And I went and had a really great interview and ended up there for 10 years. And I loved it. But I'll be honest, when I first was hired and they were talking about international territories, releases in different countries, distributors, people putting forward nominations at press junkets, I was just like taking notes in my notebook and was like, please just let me get through 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But it was fantastic. And that was like it was my learning ground. It was where I really had a chance to cut my teeth. and was promoted over the years. But prior to that, my knowledge of exactly what publicity was minimal.
Were there skills that you got from production that you found really useful when you went into that first job, or did it feel like a ground zero?
No, I mean, I think that there's a lot of transferable skills. I mean, I think, being very detail oriented was the main thing that really helped me. But outside of that, I think what's really important for publicity, and I think it was just something that I naturally, in terms of my personality, had, is that you really have to keep a cool head because there's a lot that's going on. You have a lot of deadlines. You have a lot of people who need things. There are just multiple things happening all at once. And, people's emotions run high. There's a lot of pressure. And so being able to be really calm and kind of zen in the midst of all of that, it doesn't mean that you're not switched on, but it's sort of like, that thing that they say about, ducks, and you see them like in a lake on the surface, and it looks like they're just so smoothly gliding across the water, but underneath their feet are doing this, right? So I had an attention for detail, and I had the ability to just be calm in the eye of a storm, because that's where solutions come. You cannot, like, if you are, as they say in the UK, if you're flapping, if you have an upset producer, if someone is nervous, if you are suddenly kind of elevated and nervous, I can't be like this and have you have confidence that I'm going to be able to de-escalate a situation or come up with a solution. And so I think having that be a part of my personality was very, very helpful going into PR, and that attention to detail, which if you're a PA, you have to really be on top of things on sets, or if you're someone's assistant, it just easily kind of transfers right in.
So I guess kind of looking at if someone was kind of starting out, you said that you first started out as a personal publicist. And I think there's a lot of words that go around in terms of personal publicist and campaigns. And I guess I just want to know, it'd be good to know what the day-to-day look like. How do you make that first step? Is it you find someone finds you? How do you establish yourself in that space?
It has been kind of a long and interesting journey for me personally. I think that, these days there are more resources than ever in terms of how folks can come into the profession. There are different kinds of schemes, mentorships, things like that. I think that personally, I tend to also find myself really kind of keeping an eye out for folks who are doing the pivot, because I do think that, although we don't always talk about it, there is a thing with ageism in our industry. And when you talk about discrimination, what you tend to find is that the people who are hardest hit from discrimination are people who are a bit older, who were trying to find their dreams, work in this industry prior to 2020, when everybody kind of had a wake-up call. And maybe they only got so far. Maybe they made a choice and wanted to have children and raise their children and then come back in, and it gets harder. And there need to be more avenues in. If someone is like, yeah, I took a moment, I had kids, I was a carer, I was doing a great job, and, suddenly there were layoffs, so that it isn't, it isn't as inclusive as it should be. It can be still quite exclusive. But what I can say is that for anyone who really, really wants to get into PR, as with any role, I think it's important to be passionate about it, to really know that it's something that you want to do and that you have a curiosity about, and to let that positive nature take you into your networking conversations, the kinds of jobs that you apply for, but to also be okay doing something that is a junior role, even if what you've been doing before was maybe a little bit more senior to that, right? So even if you're trying to get in from the ground up in PR, sometimes you might have folks who are like, yeah, but I was an exec assistant over here. And this seems like this is, lower or kind of not in line with the work I've been doing. I think it's really important for any of us. And also times are tough. So, jobs are jobs and opportunities are opportunities. But if there's something that sounds like is really interesting, go for it and explain to someone why you're so enthusiastic about it. If they're looking at your CV and going, oh, wait, but you've been doing this over here. Why do you want to get into PR? Like, be your authentic self, be excited, talk about, why you want a role, because sometimes just being able to get your foot in the door and to start to do something in PR and to be learning on the ground as you do it is the thing that then opens up other doors and opportunities. With PR, it's kind of funny because there isn't necessarily a particular formula. Usually you've got to get a role at an agency, at a distributor, with a streamer, at a studio, or working with someone who's an independent. Those are kind of the only ways that you kind of get in.
Does it really depend, do you think, on kind of who you are and how you want to approach it, whether it's better to just start as an independent or to go first to a company? Do you think there's any sort of benefits to one or the other?
I think if we're talking real talk, I think obviously like it, any of the sites or any of the studios, the streamers, you can look and see what kind of roles that they have on offer and start there. I mean, because why wouldn't you? Like that is the ideal. I think that in terms of folks who are independents, that is something that kind of comes out of the changes and the shifts in our industry. So you have lots of companies that downsized, and so then you have a lot of independent contractors who are out there, or maybe they go back to their agencies, where they started out their careers. If someone is working as an independent contractor, it's usually because of something, it says something about the nature of our industry. Yes, it can also have to do with an entrepreneurial spirit, but let's be honest, 8 times out of 10, there's been a shift or something, and that person, that professional is like, this is what I do it well, so I'm still out here doing it. But, I think anywhere that you can get in and get some experience is a good thing, wherever it is. If you can get some experience and get a better feel for what it is that PR really and truly is and how it differs for narrative films, for documentaries, for shorts, so that you can see also where you really want to go. That like there isn't a wrong move, but you just want to kind of apply and go for it.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting because it's kind of what we were talking about earlier in terms of wanting to discuss the landscape, and then the other side of this, which is your personal self within that. And is it kind of that a lot of the companies, why people go independent is because the doors just aren't there. And it's sometimes where you best want to express yourself. And as you said, it's a place that you can go to really do what you want to do and express yourself in your own campaigns. And I think that touches on another point of how important is it to establish, like, do you have a signature style in the way that you create campaigns and the way that you do publicity or any PR? Is there like something that you always take with you, or does it always change depending on the film that you're with and the audience you're talking to?
I think I find that it always changes depending on the film, the kind of film, the vision, and strategic thoughts of like the director and the filmmaking team. But also, you know, I'm a little bit of a unicorn. So I'm a good example of someone who, out of a love for, you know, what I do, pivoted and pivoted and pivoted, and then kind of looked back and was like, oh, I'm very lucky to have had this incredible career. Um, I, you know, some people know, some people don't know. There was a piece, it was a first person piece that ran in Screen International last year, which came out of, it was a private email. And then in conversation with the editors at Screen, we decided that it was something that could be useful to share with others. So I had a particular kind of career. It was going great. I was doing the usual ascension that you're supposed to do, and ended up as a VP at a studio at a time when you just didn't have Black VPs at the studio at that level and at that particular studio. And it was a very difficult environment. It was an incredible opportunity in lots of ways in terms of what I learned to do on that very, very high scale. But I could write a book about some of the experiences that happened there. And when my contract was up, it was like, thanks, out. We've been wanting you out. We just had to wait because we couldn't fire you. We couldn't do anything to you because you were doing a good job, but we've just been waiting. And so what that meant was, especially then, like this is like 15 years ago, it's not like now where you have people that approach roles and people's experience in different ways. At that time, me, you know, and that was when I moved to the UK as well, like coming in and there's no other VP jobs. Well, unless you're independently wealthy, guess what? You have to work. So I just was like, let me get to work. I'm in the UK. I need to learn about theatrical, you know, campaigns in the UK, not just international, that was what I had been doing for 13, 14 years. I really had to just hustle and do the work. And people were like, well, you were just a VP. You can't get a job like this. And it was like, well, like I have to eat and I have to keep a roof over my head. There were people who had judgments about that. There were people, but I just kept going. And the things that were interesting to me, you know, I was at Lionsgate. After my time at Lionsgate, I took a sabbatical from doing just PR and I went and I worked with international NGOs on humanitarian campaigns, but working with talent. Then I came back, I started working at film festivals. I was just doing the work and always thinking, how many strings can I add to my bow so that either when I do get another, you know, job at a studio or someplace again, I've got all of these great experiences, like I've got a great big toolkit, or if I'm going to be a freelancer, I want to have the best range of experience that I can offer to a client. And so I just kept going and going and going. And then it was like, wow, so now you've done all of these different kinds of campaigns and these different things, and now you have a career. But trust me, when I was doing it, it was like, just keep working, be your authentic self, be your best self. You know, what is the film? What's it about? What is it that resonates for you? What is it that's going to be relevant to the press who you need to engage with this film in order to get it out there to the audiences? Like all of that just happened film by project by project. Now, I don't necessarily recommend this, you know, this course for anybody. I wouldn't wish it on like my worst enemy. It was hard, it was painful, but all at the same time, it built character. There's so much more that I had a chance to learn because I didn't get to just do just international campaigns and press junkets or just this. It just gave me like a wider range. I think that for every film, there's going to be something that, you know, that you can connect with, but also if you're in PR, even if it's a film and you're like, wow, like, this is not my thing. or I'm having a hard time connecting with it. Well, it's our job to figure out or to find the thing in anything that we can connect with so that we can talk about it and we can be passionate about it. And then the press, they feel that. Then hopefully, if it resonates for them, the audience through their writings, through what they talk about on their radio shows, through, how they discuss something on a TV program, hopefully that kind of excitement carries on. But for me, having a personal style, the personal style was just to survive and to find a way to do something that I loved doing.
Yeah, I hear that. That's a really good note to take on, because when we hear again going into campaigns and thinking which one should I pick, and if you can or can't be, I guess, picky for the ones that you want to start with, but I think it's important that, as you're saying, find something. There is something that you would be passionate about in anything, and to connect with that. And I think that is a really important point to take forward. And hearing you talk about individual films, how does that compare to when you were doing PR management for a whole festival, BFI festivals, for both of them? How does it compare going from individual projects to kind of everything across the board that's within that?
Yes, I mean, that was, a really incredible role to have, because it really allowed me to just continue to learn and grow. With the BFI, the role across both of those festivals, with the London Film Festival, it's so big that obviously we had an agency to help deliver that campaign and to oversee all the red carpets and to kind of staff that. So really my job was to kind of oversee their campaign and all of the work that they were going to set out and do, but also to just see how best I could support the agency in everything that they needed in order to deliver that campaign. So I sort of worked hand in hand with the agency. I managed them. I was overseeing the work that they would do, keeping them on track, in terms of, every aspect of what we needed to do for the festival also, which is working with a lot of distributors, working with independents, all of that. It was a way of kind of taking what you do with the campaign for one thing, and then just kind of multiplying it. So really, no matter what, it was going to be about, is everything that needs to be done for all of these films, is that in place? For the films that have their own, publicists, because, the way that publicity breaks down, there are a lot of different kinds of publicists, and one film will have multiple publicists working on it at different points in time. So that role was very much about really distilling everything down across the whole of the program. Which films have their own publicists? How can we support? Which films have distribution? Which films don't? Which films are coming into the festival and want UK distribution and need more support? How do we do that? It was incredible, and it was everything from strategic thinking and the overall campaign to on the ground, looking after the director of the festival, being on the red carpets, making sure that things were running smoothly, and really kind of just being a go-between between a lot of different departments. And me personally, I also felt it was really important in that role to be looking at, okay, so we've got these red carpets, we've got a wonderful agency, they look after these things, they've got all that experience, but there's also something a little bit broken in our industry in terms of who's on the carpets, what access they get. So very often, I'd be the person on a carpet that would be whispering in some talent's ear to make sure that, if there's like a black crew that's all the way at the end of the carpet, or any crew really, but especially when you have like people of color, and women, or, women who were amazing journalists, and I knew that they were just starting out, so they didn't necessarily have the profile. A lot of times I was that go-between, because the agency know what they're doing. They're pros, they're amazing. Also, I had been at that agency for 10 years, so I know that they're awesome. But other little areas where I could help and make it a good experience for our press as well as, you know, our filmmakers, I was running around doing that. So it was just a very, very big role. But with Flair, with BFI Flair, the beautiful thing was that that was a festival where we handled that in-house. So as opposed to supporting and overseeing an agency with Flair, I had a chance to work across that program in a way where it was about promoting the festival, but also me and another colleague, and then we'd have a junior. We could really give a lot of love to those films and those filmmakers who might have maybe a bit of a longer journey before they would find distribution.
Wow, that does sound like it encompasses everything that you've done, and they do sound like incredible projects to take on. And it's really good to hear kind of how the two are different, how one feels like, again, it's you're dealing with this agency and you're covering everything else, and how you're seeing, you know, on the ground, on the literally the red carpet, about who people go to. I think sometimes we don't think about that they're being told, like, go here, go here, go here, talk to this person. And they're not always being directed to the person, you know, who's got all black crew or is at the end or is like a female led crew. So I think that's really interesting to hear about. And another thing that jumps out is both of these festivals and all the films you work on, you know, they have audiences. They have sometimes very distinct audiences. How do you connect with those audiences? How do you find that audience? How do you get to know that audience within a somewhat short space of time, just for that moment that you're on that campaign for that project?
I mean, I think that, you know, that goes back to what we've been talking about, you know, being our authentic selves, even in our professional bodies, because, you know, as publicists, you know, we are thinking about the audience, but we're also still thinking about them, you know, via the media. So it's everything that we're doing a lot of it with the press, with an eye towards, you know, that audience. And I think that that is where a natural curiosity about people, subjects, places, things is really important in PR. It's not, you know, I mean, maybe that's a very kind of personal thing to say, but I do think that when I think about publicists who are really amazing at their jobs, it isn't just, I know how to speak to press, I know how to run a press junket, I know how to write up a press release, I have very good, you know, verbal and written communication skills. I think that you need to be able to be someone who can say, you know, oh gosh, you know, that film that is about golf. Okay, maybe I don't love golf, but I have a knowledge about who the players are. Or even if I don't, if, you know, what comes across my desk is a film about, you know, golf, then it's my job to figure it out, you know. Or, you know, maybe a better example for me is I'm not a horror person. Like, I like scary movies, but when it gets gory, like, that's, if it's going to give me like nightmares, no thank you. But I can remember being, you know, at an agency, and, you know, at an agency, you have, you know, certain clients that you work with, and you work with them on all of their films. And I had a client and they had a horror film, and it was like, uh-oh, like, what am I going to do? Like, this is not in my wheelhouse. But this particular filmmaker, I had a conversation with him, like, for a generic interview, and he talked about like his kind of, you know, visual references were the painter Francis Bacon. I'm an art person, so even though I'm not a horror person, there was an in that he gave me to, like, right, Francis Bacon, visual references, the beautiful and the grotesque, like they're, because at least I have certain it's not even about like an encyclopedic knowledge about art. I'm curious and I love art, food, other cultures. Those things are the things that mean that I can then find a way into, okay, the audience for this film is going to be folks who like this. If I don't have much time, then I better do my research. It isn't just about, writing up the press materials or dealing with the press. We need to look at, who is the audience for this thing? What might they like? Who are the press that might like to write about this? Be curious, be interested in things, because that's how we get to know those audiences until you have then been doing it long enough and you've built up the expertise.
Yeah. Has there ever been a campaign you've said no to, or a film you've said no to? Or you take them on, all on?
I think only recently, since I've been kind of working in a consultancy and in a collective with other publicists, it's rare, but I think that there have been a couple of times where it just wasn't necessarily something that played to my strengths. And also, I just, this isn't a judgment. Anyone who has ever been on my website, you can pretty much see the kinds of films and the kinds of things that I gravitate towards. And I can just think of a couple of things where it was just hardcore horror. And I'm not for anything where, there is a woman that's going to be chased and slashed. Not a judgment. That's just not my preference. So I'm probably not going to be the best person for the film. And I don't want to take on anything that I can't do a wonderful job on, because I want to do a great job.
No, that's good to know, because it's good to know that you can say no sometimes to think, because I'm not a horror person either. I really can't do it. I love film. It's my everything. But same with slashers. I draw the line. It's not for me.
I mean, is that a good business decision? I don't know. But again, also it's not a good business decision to take on something and you're like, I think I could potentially be at a loss as to how to really, really do something fantastic for this film. Whatever the film is, slasher or otherwise, like if it's coming across my desk, I want to give it my all. And if I don't think that I can do the best for it, well, that's not a good business decision either, because that's going to be an unhappy client. And you can't always control that, but you certainly want to give your all.
Yeah. Okay. I hear you. Definitely. Just about, what can you give your best to in all senses, even if you don't like it. But going back to find something that you connect with.
Absolutely.
It was really cool to hear, actually, that there's always something going on there.
Yeah.
I guess we've got a couple questions coming through, so I'll ask you kind of one or two last questions.
Yes, hopefully some of these answers are useful.
Yes, absolutely. Everything you give is gold right now. I'm loving it. So I think everyone else is. But going back, and I guess kind of just expanding and giving it its own question, for somebody that is going into the industry right now and is looking to kind of pivot into it, what is the landscape? I know you talked about something that kind of happened, like 15 years ago, but what is the landscape now, especially for Black people, for people of color? What would we be walking into if we wanted to go into PR?
I mean, I think that it's better than it's ever been. It's not perfect, but it's better, and there are more opportunities. I think the thing about PR, and one of the myths to kind of debunk, and as you and I were discussing before we started, this isn't to be negative. This isn't to be a naysayer. I believe in sharing information that's going to empower everybody, that's going to give you the knowledge that you need to walk into any environment, and to kind of be comfortable, or to be able to kind of put like an invisible kind of shield around yourself so that you can do what you need to do. And so the landscape is such that, like anything in the business, it's very competitive. A lot of people want to work in this industry. PR is very, very, very hard work. So that's not saying anything about other roles and that other roles are less hard or more hard, but PR is more than just being on a red carpet, working a beautiful event, being on a set, being at a party. Like, it's very, very hard work. There isn't, there aren't set hours. It can be whenever. You have to do the work. Things come up and you have to be able to handle them. As professionals in the UK, if you are working, and this is across the board, wherever you're working, if you are working with a film that has, an American filmmaker that has a studio, even though there's studios like in London, guess what? They defer to the folks in the US. So that means just when you think, oh, it's getting to be 5 or 6 o'clock and it's the end of the day, no, it's not, because LA is just waking up. Like, you're across different time zones. There's a lot of work to do. There are tiny, tiny details. You can be super, super prepared. And then guess what? At the last minute, something could come up and you have to completely overhaul, a schedule right then and there. It doesn't matter if it's your boyfriend or girlfriend's birthday. It doesn't, like, you have to stop everything and you have to do this work. Does that mean that it isn't fun, that it isn't fulfilling, that it isn't amazing? It's all of those things, but it's all of those things because you have to love the work. You can't look at it as, oh, okay, it's Friday night and I've got to wait, for LA because now we've got to do a conference call and it means I can't go out, or it means my partner's got to cook the lovely dinner rather than me. You can't look at it like that. You have to be like, this is exciting to me. I love this film. I love working on it. I can't wait for people to be able to see it. I'm excited because over the weekend, we're going to screen it for press. Like, it's a lot, and it's very, it's very intense. And so that's not to put people off. It's just to say that if that's not quite your jam, you might want to think about, okay, why do you want to do PR? Because it is not one of the kind of phone it in jobs. It's very, very hard work, but it is wonderful. It is such a beautiful thing when a filmmaker is having their first, big screening and the audience loves it and the press gets it, and that you have, some really beautiful coverage to share with them because this has been, their baby that they've been living with. It is an amazing, amazing role, but it's hard. And sometimes, that work-life balance, the work has to be part of your life. That's not a bad thing, but you have to be excited and to want it and enjoy it and to enjoy working with your colleagues, even if you all have to work until midnight. That is the more important thing to say, I think, about PR than where the landscape is, because there are plenty of entry-level jobs, working with amazing companies, working with amazing professionals. Now we've got a garden blower. That's life on Zoom, sorry. There's all kinds of really amazing opportunities if you want to just get your foot in the door, and work in PR at streamers, at agencies, at, independent distributors. It is out there, but it's hard. It's competitive. And I think that when you're from any marginalized community, right? So it can be, if you're Black, if you're brown, if you identify as having a disability, you're non-binary, there might be certain spaces where there's just not as many people who look like you, who present like you, who identify like you. I think it's important that we still go into these spaces, that we still follow our dreams. Our dreams are just as important as anybody else's. But I think in PR, having that tenacity to just be like, oh, okay, so didn't work out there, let me go somewhere else. I am passionate. I already know that I have certain transferable skills. I've got that attention to detail. I have a knowledge and a curiosity about a lot of things. I'm personable. I want to meet and talk with people. Let me keep going. That I think that that's a bit more important because the landscape is the landscape. Films are still being made. Tons of them are being made. They need to be promoted. PR firms and PR teams need interns, need juniors, need people who are enthusiastic and excited to be there. And so just really like understand that and also embrace it.
No, thank you for the honesty and the truth about how it is and how you have to be within it. And I think, again, a really important note is the landscape is what it is, and we know how it is, and it's just more about persisting as who you are, knowing your skills, knowing what you can bring. That is most important for how you drive your own success, and I think that's a really important thing to take forward. So thank you for that. We've got 2 questions here that we would be great to answer. So we've got one from May. How do you get press and independent film screening? And what should you write to invite press?
Right. How do you get them? Okay. I mean, with a film, and especially if we're talking about independent films, you know, if you don't already have distribution or a deal for your film, really what you want to be trying to do is see if you can get a sales agent so that there's somebody that is doing that job for you. But also, I mean, I think the main way that independent films get found these days are through film festivals. And that for any publicist, and this is it's a conversation that I have often in training environments and also just in kind of meeting and being contacted by filmmakers, is that your film needs to either be in a festival, your film needs to be screening somewhere, or it needs to be going on a platform, even if it's not a big streamer. Like if you have something and it's an environmental type film, whether that's a documentary or a narrative film, there are different platforms now. Like there's Water Bear, which is a streaming platform. It's all about like environmental films. There has to be a place where your film can be seen by people in order for a publicist to be able to do any kind of work for you. Because the fact of the matter is that we're in this kind of incredible time where it's easier than ever to make films. Remember, back in the day, people were shooting on film. You had to have certain kinds of resources and cameras and equipment in order to make films. Nowadays, wonderful creative folks, you have digital cameras. A person can make a film on an iPhone and do something incredible with it. It's easier to make films, but what that means is for the media, for professionals, they can't cover everything. A publicist can't get everybody to look at your film and to screen it and to write about it, not because they don't want to, not because your film isn't amazing, but those writers, their commissioning editors need to ask them to cover something and say that they're going to get paid for it. They also have rent to pay, kids to feed, whatever. And so having that understanding about that in the landscape, if you're making a film, you also have to be business minded enough to be like, I'm not just going to make the film. If I also want publicity for the film, it needs to be showing somewhere. Now, I'm not trying to be elitist and say, okay, if you can't get into a film festival, if you can't, if you don't have a sales agent, if someone hasn't picked up your film, it doesn't mean that that's not going to be relevant for an audience. That's where the artistry comes in, and where you need to be looking at other ways of, I'm going to show my film in my community, because what we're going to do is we're going to put it on the screen, and we're going to partner with other community members. We're going to make incredible food. We're going to make an event out of this so that people can come down. Then that is something that a publicist, can get their head wrapped around, because even though the Times or even though the Guardian might be like, well, I don't know, there might be someone who's like, okay, wait a second. So these two filmmakers have films about family, community, bridging gaps in cultures, and they're going to, they've gotten permission to block off the street, and they're going to screen it all weekend long, and there's going to be food and music and this and this and this. Well, someone might want to run that might, get picked up into, and get put into some cultural guides. But the thing about publicity is that it is public facing. There has to be some place where your film is going to screen and can be found, and then someone can be talking to the press about it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hope that answers that.
We've got 2 more questions, but I know we've only got 4 minutes left, so we might have to go through them at quick speed. But there's one
super fast.
Yeah, there's one from Drew, who's just asking, how do you get your press release or your email pitch to stand out? What's the ideal length and lingo to use?
Length and lingo. Okay. I think that these days, what I've noticed is it used to be back in the day that the longer, you'd have a full page press release with loads of details, and that would be the thing. What I've noticed these days, especially if it's a trade announcement or, really any announcement at all, at the longest, I would say 1 page. What I've found to work a lot better with press these days, just because they don't really have time, is a good solid 3 paragraphs that are passionate, and that are specific and really, really telling what it is about the film that is most noteworthy and is going to be most noteworthy to the press that you're reaching out to. That's going to be your sweet spot.
Okay, perfect. I think it's all Drew put thank you, so that's great. We've got one last one. So from Roy, who's older emerging documentary filmmaker. It's a great talk. Could Mia break down what movies she takes an interest in? Does she have a matrix of features a movie should have? Just quickly off the dome.
Oh my goodness. That I personally am interested in, or that just in general. In terms of documentary films, obviously that's all about us being able to be brought into worlds that we don't necessarily know, but also, or maybe being brought into worlds that we know very, very well, but through the eyes of someone else. I think that with documentaries these days, there's so many people who are doing it at this level. I think it is super important to be as creative as possible, because I think that, yes, of course, there's still very prominent documentaries that are talking heads and that, use archival footage, or, all of the myriad of ways that we enter into documentaries these days. But I think that what's really interesting, and if you're emerging, be creative, throw out the rule book, find other ways of telling true stories, not just sitting down and talking to people, or sit down and talk to people. And also, bring in animation, also bring in, photography and art, but, really get to the heart of the story, and tell it in an authentic way, because that is going to be interesting to people. Even, if you don't have the platforms that maybe someone else has, if I'm going to press who are sometimes cynical, and you have done or crafted or made something that is completely authentic and original, then that is something that press can also sink their teeth into. So, go for it. That's my main piece of advice.
Great, thank you. Well, we're at 8 now. We've had one extra question come through. I didn't know if you quickly wanted to say it before we wrap up.
Yeah, are we allowed to? Like, yes.
Yeah, we'll do it. We're having a good time. Candice would love to know which film festival has been Mia's favorite to work at and why.
Okay. That's difficult. Off the top of my head, I would say Cannes, because I'm a Francophile, but also, you know, here's what I'm going to say, and it seems like, oh gosh, and it's such a big one, and why? And I think that the thing that I love about Cannes is that you do have so many people that come in from all over the world. The size and the scope of it, the main program, and also all of the sidebars. But the thing that I always really loved about Cannes, and I think I'm at about, this past year was like year number 27 consecutive, going, working, all of that, is that, you know, because of that sheer scale of it, being able to indulge in films from like all over the world, that has always been what I loved about it so much. Not the big red carpets, not, you know, not necessarily the big celebrities, but, you know, filmmakers coming out of, you know, sub-Saharan Africa, South Africa, you know, South Asia, East Asia, I mean, just Europe, everything, just the people, a certain kind of old glamour, but just that full base of, you know, all of the press. There's something like 5,000 press that come into Cannes from all over the world. And that I just find really exciting and delightful. But other than that, South by Southwest, because it's Austin and it's an amazing town, and that's very, very down to earth, and just a really great festival for people and community, and the intersection of film, music, tech, conference, all of that.
Great, I'm writing that down. South by Southwest, I hadn't heard of before, or it hadn't been immediate on my radar. Cannes, obviously, that's the one that always goes around, but I've got those noted down.
Can I just quickly say something in wrapping things up for everyone? I know that this, I mean, I don't know. I hope that this was useful. I know we were kind of all over the place. The real thing I want to say to anyone interested in PR, and I know that like the title of this talked about, you know, like your personal brand and PR and having a good career in PR and how those two things kind of intersect. Authenticity, authenticity, authenticity. The things that you're curious about, there could be a film that comes up one day and you're the perfect person to work on it because it's something that you specifically are curious about, the things that you love, the things that you did in the past that you think isn't relevant. You worked in retail, you were a model, you worked on a farm. Own all of those things, own all the things that make you uniquely you, because I personally have been in situations where those things were the things that got me a job, were the things that got me a film, because someone said, you did what? Oh gosh, well then you know this thing from the inside out. Be proud of who you are, because all of the things that make us, those are not necessarily the things that people talk about when they say, oh, a career in PR. But it is important. Be you. Be who you are. Own your past. Own your future and the things that you're interested in. That makes you an interesting person. That means that you can understand things. That means that you're going to care about things. And sometimes maybe that wins you the pitch. It might not, but I'm telling you, beautiful projects and beautiful opportunities, you know, at an agency, at a streamer, those kinds of things will find their way to you when you are being who you are. That is so important. And I don't necessarily think it's the things that people talk about. They want to know that you have good communication skills, that you have good written skills, you're calm under pressure, you're detail-oriented. Yes, all of those things too. But you know, just really feel good about who you are and take that into every conversation, every interview, anything entry level, just do that. That is your personal brand. That is your authentic you. And that absolutely is going to take you where you need to go. I truly believe it, and I've seen it. That's my last thing.
You couldn't have rounded it up better. I might as well just I'll just stop talking now. You know what I mean? Just sort of, oh, what was I going to say? Mia, thank you so much. That was
It's really my pleasure.
inspiring, and it was, as you said, having an honest conversation and a transparent conversation. And so hearing everything you've said, and from practical things to just about who you are and your authenticity, it's all been really amazing to hear and have you share. So thank you so much for being with us on this Tuesday evening. And thank you to everyone as well for sharing your questions and connecting with us. I've seen a lot of people put like who they are in the group chat, and
thank you for tuning in.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really important to share kind of what we're doing. So thank you so much. And again, thank you to Mia. Can't say it enough for being with us.
Sure.
Thank you to Sarah, who has been just doing amazing work behind the scenes.
Thank you, Sarah.
Big up Sarah. And thank you to BYP Network and the New Black Film Collective for kind of making this happen and bringing the collaboration to life. We have the QR code. That means that you can sign up to Javelin if you want to. So that's going to be up there for a little bit. It means that you can register straight away as well for more events that we're doing like this. You can apply and kind of get a note when BYP creators, which is who we are doing more things. You can hear from more amazing people like Mia. Don't forget as well to follow the New Black Film Collective on Instagram, X, Facebook at the New Black Film Collective. Same with BYP Network on Instagram. It's just BYP Network. And thank you again to everyone. Can't say it enough for, you know, on this beautiful sunny evening being here and hearing all this great stuff. So hope you all have a great evening and to see you all again. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.